Zamislite svijet u kojem slijedite svoje najdublje želje. Radite ono što volite i što vas spontano privlači. Kreativnost vam se raspiruje. Motivacija stiže iz vaše nutrine. Ponosni ste na svoj rad i osjećate da ste dio nekog većeg plana. Cjeloviti ste jer u samoj biti živite u skladu sa svojim talentima i interesima. Umjesto da vas zamara, rad vas regenerira. Vrijeme gotovo da prolazi prebrzo. To je ono što je Kinslow nazvao eu-osjećaj. Osjećaj unutarnjeg mira i vanjskog blagostanja. Jedna od knjiga koje je Kinslow napisao zove se Kad ništa ne pomaže, ne činite ništa. Pa kad već ništa ne pomaže, ipak smo učinili nešto. Dogovorili smo sastanak sa Kinslowom ovdje, na rubu znanosti.
Dobar večer. Kinslow autor je više knjiga, poput eu-osjećaj, tajna kvantnog življenja, Kada ništa ne pomaže, ne činite ništa. U tim naslovima zapravo je sadržano ono čemu će danas biti riječi i staro i novo u isto vrijeme. Dobar večer.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm excited about this, I really am.
Pa evo, baš smo malo prije imali priliku iskusiti jedan naslov vaše knjige, s obzirom da taksi nije došao, pa ste dolazili drugim taksijem, pa smo tako, kolega režiser i ja, čekali hoće li gosti kasniti ili ne. I ja sam pogledao knjigu i pomislio, pa eto, kada ništa ne pomaže, ne čini ništa, što smo mogli. I eto, ipak smo tu na vrijeme i nekako se sve stislo. Pa, materija zapravo kojom se vi bavite, mnogi su se bavili njome iz raznih kuteva, tisućama godina. Ona je uvijek inspirativna i nikad zapravo i često puta čak i pogrešno shvaćanja, ali svaki put je vrlo zanimljivo na koje se sve načine može reći i uvijek naći i bolji način da zapravo se to lakše nekako pohvata, taj čudan twist gdje zapravo čovjek pokušava zavrtjeti protiv sebe samog. Pa eto, krenimo od nekoliko pojmova, a poslije ćemo vidjeti kud ćemo stići. Jedan od pojmova koji se zapravo krije iz ovih knjiga jest nešto što ste nazvali kvantni entrainment. Čak ta riječ je eto u hrvatskom u prevodu čak i ostala na engleskom jer ima više značenja. Ali eto, kada biste za uvod, ne morate odmah sve detalje potrošiti, ali ako je moguće objasniti što bi to bio zapravo kvantni entrainment ili kako god ga preveli.
Yes, the words quantum entrainment, they come from science. But it's not necessary to understand, at least my understanding of that quantum expression. The best way to look at what quantum entrainment means is what it does. And that is that quantum entrainment is a technique. And that technique takes us from our everyday awareness to a very, very quiet state in mind. And this state, when we experience it, is actually deeper than our deepest sleep. It's the deepest rest we can get. Now, that's not just Frank saying that. This state was established physiologically back in 1970, and it was found that people who were able to generate this state got a very, very deep rest, deeper than sleep, and that meant that they got a very deep healing very quickly. And so when we do quantum entrainment, we experience a deep level of rest and peace and joy and contentment. And then we heal body and mind, environment. We find the healing takes place in every area of our lives. Simple technique, anyone can do it. And as soon as you start it, you get immediate results.
Pa eto, moram reći, jedna od vaših knjiga počinje sa jednim eksperimentom, ovako gdje čovjek stavi svoju ruku i možda neki i poklopi srednjake, možda neki prst bliži, duži, neki je kraći, ali zadatak je svakako iza zapovjed da prst bude duži i držati pažnju na njemu minutu. I stvarno, kako je rečeno, drugi put kad staviš prste su se nekako izjednačili. Drugim riječima, očigledno da je riječ o nečem trenutnom brzom, pa zapravo je pitanje kako tako jedan sitan pomak u svjesnosti može dovesti do tako nagle pozitivne promjene u tijelu, u osjećajima, a zapravo se radi o jednom skoro malom i beznačajnom skretanju pažnje.
Well, we're lucky as human beings in one sense. When we perceive something, when our senses become aware of something, when we hear or see or smell something, there's an immediate reaction in us in two levels. One is our physiology and one is our psychology, our feelings and our mental state. And that is automatic and instantaneous. So that's what we use in QE. It's not a mental technique. You don't have to believe in it for it to work. Quantum entrainment, QE, is a technique that's founded on our perceptions. And here's what I mean. Here's a good example. Let's say that you hear screeching brakes from a car, and you turn and you look and you see a dog get hit. It's laying in the street and maybe howling. Okay. Now, you saw that instantly on your physiology. Your eyes dilate, your cardiac output increases, your adrenaline starts flowing, your muscles get tight. All kinds of changes take place automatically and instantly. Also, because the mind and the body are intimately related, once the body experiences that, the mind follows along. And so you may find yourself getting agitated, angry, afraid, frustrated. All sorts of negative feelings go along with that negative impulse just from seeing the dog being hit. Now, you look over here and you see a beautiful sunset. Now, you're perceiving that, and what happens is body relaxes, mind settles down automatically. And that's why it's so fast and so deep. We're not creating an abnormal situation within a human being. It's quite normal. That process has been going on since before birth, and we just simply utilize it in a way that creates the maximum of healing. So what I discovered when I discovered a quantum entrainment technique was a way to bring our perception to nothing, non-movement, no feedback at all to our senses. And when that happens, we get this very, very deep rest. We might even note that our breathing gets very refined because we don't need the energy to keep the body going. We get this, in fact, even for short periods of time, we may even stop breathing. And this is indicative of the saints who live in caves and practice breathing exercises, yet this happens in a workshop within the first half a day. Mm-hmm. Why is it so fast and so effective? It's because we human beings already have everything we need to perceive. And all it is just a simple process of perceiving this nothing, if you will, this non-movement, non-excitation. And when they perceive that, then this natural state of human existence takes place. Let me say, I say natural, meaning that we all have that capability, but because of our lifestyles, well, think about when our ancient forefathers, our hunters and gatherers, were existing. We think, oh my gosh, they had to work all the time in this survival and fight and stuff. But actually, we know now that the hunters and gatherers only had to work to survive 3 to 4 days a week. That means they had 3 to 4 days a week where they could communicate with each other, sit around the lake, watch the clouds, be restful. And this is the time when they would experience these quieter states. Now, fast forward to today, on my way over, well, my flight was late, leaving Germany, and everybody's running around and cramped into this odd thing called an airplane, and we land here in Zagreb, and we're hustling over here, and we hit traffic, because it's like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and there's smog, and there's all this going on. This is all unnatural for a human being. What do we do when we want to heal? We get away from it. We go to the beach, or we go climb a mountain, get away from all of this imposed technology.
Na koji način, s obzirom da kažete, a to doista tako jest, zapravo kao da se radi o nečemu čega se trebaš prisjetiti puno prije nego nešto što trebaš uvježbati. Kažete i opisali ste kako je to jednostavan proces koji ne zahtijeva neku meditaciju ili nekakvu vježbe disanja. Ne radi se naravno o ljenosti, nego o principu. Kako i na koji način onda može čovjek u svijetu koji ste upravo sada opisali, a koji nije od prije par tisuća godina, gdje možemo uživati u kontempliranju, za što ste napisali da zapravo čovjek nekako rođen za kontempliranje. To je njegova zapravo prirodno obitavalište, a ne nekakva stres i jurnjava. Na koji način zapravo čovjek onda može tako brzo i kratko izići iz toga nečega što mu je potpuno preuzelo misli?
Now let's draw a term from quantum mechanics. There's a term called the vacuum state. The vacuum state or the quantum vacuum is probably a better term for it. The quantum vacuum, by definition from a quantum mechanical theorist, is the nothing from which everything comes. So all of creation comes from nothing. Now, that nothing is everywhere all the time. Intellectually, we can't quite figure that out, but we can experience it. We can experience it just as easy if I said, well, look at that car, or look at that bird. It's just a matter of allowing your awareness to go from wherever it is, you know, on your handy, you're looking at all of this, and you look at the bird. That's how easy it is. It's just a shift of awareness. Now, we have a little exercise we can do with the audience, if you like. It's very quick. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to suggest that you look down. You can look in your lap, on the floor. Everybody can do this. Look down, maybe at the feet. All right, let's do that. Let's look down. All right, find something to look at down there. Now look up at the ceiling. Now, what was in your mind from the time you were looking down to the time you looked at the ceiling? Nothing. Exactly. You see, that nothing is always there, like stillness is always there behind music or sound. Like the screen is always there behind the movie. You know, the movie is playing on the screen. We don't notice it because our awareness goes to the movement. But once you get the idea that, when you learn quantum entrainment, QE, what it does is it shifts that awareness. It gives you a chance. Okay, now's the time to experience nothing. Mm-hmm. And you do it. Just that simple. Mm-hmm. Now, it's learning the technique is a little bit more involved with that, but this is the neat thing. Once you have it, it becomes more and more natural. And you don't have to try. And then you find that you're just experiencing it even while you're doing other things. You're very quiet. So you start becoming, your immune systems get stronger, you get along better with other people, you like your job more. You just become more efficient as a human being, as the human being you should be, not what somebody else tells you to be. You become more efficient as that human being, as yourself, just by simply stepping out momentarily and then coming back into that life rejuvenated, refreshed.
To je doista lako, kao što svatko može iskusiti i kao što ste rekli, lako jest. Međutim, postoji izazov u tome, a to je što se čovjek nekako treba prisjetiti da to što je lako napravi. Prisjetiti se u svakodnevnoj mašini, da tako kažem, postaje teško odjednom, zato jer jednostavno ne sjetiš se ili se nisi posvetio ili možda nisi odlučio i tako dalje. I tu se sad nameće jedno pitanje. Rekli ste kako sve izlazi iz ništavila, pa i naše misli se stalno pojavljuju. Evo, svake sekunde nova misao, je li ko zvao, jesam li je stvorio, pojma nemam. No pravo je pitanje, od kuda zapravo dolaze misli i na koji način se i taj eksperiment mentalni opet može iskoristiti da bi se uhvatio taj trenutak tišine između.
We see, what you're doing is you're imposing control. You're imposing the intellect, for instance, which is the thinking mind. And it says, okay, now I'm going to experience nothing. Now how do I do that? And this is the problem. You may have heard that it takes many years of practice to clear your mind of thought. And what we do when I teach QE in a very simple workshop, we clear the mind first in just a couple of minutes, and then later in seconds, and then instantaneously. Because it's not a thinking mind thing or an emotional mind thing. And here's the difference. If you think, I have to do this, right? I should do this, or I should try to stop thinking. So you have a technique on how to do nothing. Technique, do nothing. Technique is how to do something, and what you're doing is something in order to experience nothing. It's illogical. It doesn't work. And so what happens is you spend a lot of time doing something, years, and then eventually you just get tired of doing something and the mind settles into nothing. I've just eliminated that doing part, so that because if you, for instance, the technique might be loving kindness. If you feel, oh, I shouldn't create harm, I don't want to hurt people, I want to love, okay? That's one technique. Right? And that requires that emotional, boosting positive emotions. Okay? The other one would be Advaita Vedanta, which is using the mind to cut down everything so that when you're done, nothing is left. Very, very rigorous and very hard way to go, but an intellectual path. Okay? But what I'm doing is using the perceptual path, which is already working in you. So we're not deciding what to do, we're simply perceiving. Again, let me say, if you're looking at your phone and I say, look at the bird, where's the thinking in that? You just turn your head, oh, there's the bird. It's that simple.
Dobro, od kuda onda dolaze sve te misli i tko ih u stvari misli?
That is a good question. And when you experience nothing, and yet you still have a sense that I exist, and this gets quite esoteric, but we can do this in my workshops because you're actually having the experience. To talk about it out here, it makes no sense. How can you experience nothing and still have awareness or be awake or this sort of thing? And these are the realms of the saints and even scientists these days, the quantum mechanical scientists who studied the particles, the subatomic particles. When you listen to them talk, they sound almost like they're reading from these ancient scriptures from the Sanskrit. Those thoughts, it's a good question. Where do they come from? And the interesting thing is, we think we create our thoughts. We think that, oh, I'm in control of my life. But what happens is, when we experience nothing, we're just there. No thinking, no thoughts, okay? Then thoughts start. And my question to the class is, okay, the thoughts started. Did you start those thoughts? Did you say, okay, now I'm going to have thoughts. Now I'm going to be thinking about dinner and what I'm going to... No, they come automatically. And recent research shows us that we can have a thought, I forget exactly the amount of time, but less than a half a second. We have the thought is active in our minds before we become consciously aware of it. I think they use PET scans to determine that. So the thoughts are coming automatically. Now the question where they come from, that's a good question.
Ali zanimljivo je što ste u svojoj knjizi baš upravo to pitanje ponudili kao jednu vježbu, od mnogobrojnih prečica, jer ako sebi čovjek zapita odakle će doći moja misao, u tom trenutku je u nekom stanju očekivanja i jednostavno ne misli ništa jer čeka. Pa onda koje će boje biti moja misao, kojeg će biti mirisa i onda već za sekunde opet počneš misliti. Zanimljivo je na koji način u stvari to nekako utječe na čovjeka. Napisali ste u knjizi ovo što ste sad ispričali kao vaše iskustvo, da ste nakon godina pokušavanja da nekako pokušate ne pokušavati, prestali pokušavati pa ste onda uspjeli pokušati. Znači, svjesnost nije u stvari proces nekakav, nego više pomak od jednog pokušaja popravljanja prema jednom pokušaju prihvaćanja svijeta. I evo ja ću pročitati jednu vašu rečenicu, mislim da ona fraktalno sadrži sve, pa nam je vi možete rastumačiti. S onim što jest, nema rasprave. Što to znači?
Say that again, the quote again.
S onim što jest, nema rasprave.
Oh, yes, okay, so, and remember, my writing is translated into Croatian and then read back to me, so it takes me a little time to understand exactly what is said sometimes. Probably the way I would say that is, when you're aware of nothing, nothing is there to be aware of. Read that again, say that again for me.
Pa, drugim riječima, s onim što jest, nema rasprave. Drugim riječima, riječ je o tome kako ljudi u stvari žive u nekakvoj možda zamišljenoj stvarnosti sa svojim očekivanjima, nadanjima, krivim slikama i na kraju se sudare sa nečim što jest, a sad tu ništa ne možeš. Jednostavno je tako kako je. Eto, kad ništa ne pomaže, šta možete nego učiniti ništa.
Yes, well, this has just enthralled human beings since we first became self-aware 100,000 years ago. And that is, who am I? What's my place in the universe? What is life? Now, I've just finished working on a new technique to introduce this experience of awe. When you look at the stars and you're just overwhelmed and
Evo, dopustite da vas prekinem i da citiram Einsteina iz vaše knjige. Postoje dva načina kako se može živjeti. Jedan je kao da ništa nije čudo, a drugi kao da je sve čudo. Čini mi se da ste vi zabrali ovaj drugi.
Yes, and that's an Einstein quote. Yes. And he's true. And he also said in that same treatise there that if you don't live your life as a miracle, right, then, or you don't have this sense of awe in life, then life is just, you're going from one thing to the next, and then to the next, and then you die. So, and what happens is, we get to a certain point in our life, most of us, and maybe you've had this experience. You get to a certain point and you say, you look around, you've got enough money, you've got everything you need to survive. And you say, is this all there is to life? Is this it? What more is there? Now, that drive, that question comes from our inability to see the other side of life. I'm not saying that the outer life is secondary or somehow inferior to this inner life of peace and stillness. No, we need both of them together. That's the point. And if we're always doing something, okay, I've got to get my grades up, and then I've got to get a good college education. Now I've got to get a good job, and how about a family, and all of this sort of thing. And we have all these plans so that I can feel some worth, some sense, some ultimate sense of worth. Not just, I got a better job now, because that goes away, doesn't it? As soon as you grab something and you have it for a while, I made this goal here. Look, I'm now making 3 times as much money, or I have I've just got this beautiful relationship, right? But everything that is created dies. Now, I don't mean that in a terrible,
Dapače, to je čak, rekao bih, i dobra vijest.
Yeah, it's existentialism, aside, it is a good thing, because when anything is created, moves. Everything in creation moves. And it has 2 aspects, that movement. One is the form of it, and 2 is the energy. So the chairs that we're sitting in are energy in the form of a chair, energy because they hold us up. Now, each finer level of creation exhibits more energy. We could get more energy out of the chair than just sitting in it if we burned it and released more energy in the form of heat and light. But then if we wanted more energy, we could go to the atomic level, split the atoms. Burning the chair is molecular. Then the atoms, if we knew how to split the atoms of the chair. See, so what we're doing is, at each finer level, is more orderly, we could say, in one sense. Not totally, but so in one sense, it's more orderly, and more orderly has more value for us. Because, for instance, we're talking about healing. When you experience this state of nothing, we call it you-feeling, by the way. The state of you-feeling, healing takes place automatically. And you'll see, if you get on YouTube and put in my name, you'll see me do some demonstrations in some of the workshops. And some pretty wild things happen. People can't lift their arm, been 6, 7 years, and then all of a sudden in just a few minutes they're moving it around. It's very, it's exciting and wow, but that's not the point. It comes from the most unexciting space, the place, and that is that quietness. And so when you experience that, there's a greater order and there's a potential for that energy to reorganize in a positive way for you, right? So what happens is if you have some problem, right, and you do QE, you experience you feeling, what you're doing is taking everything to a ground state. Oh, wow, I can rest. Kind of like going to sleep at night, only much deeper. And then when it comes back out again, things are better. Automatically. You don't have to try to...
Drugim riječima, čim je vas više u danu, dan vam je gori. Čim čovjeka ima manje u danu, dan mu je bolji. Što bi to bio taj eu-osjećaj? Osim izraza kvantni entrainment, da se sad ne zapličem u pokušaj prijevoda, do recimo eu-osjećaja, što bi zapravo trebao predstavljati, u kakvoj je vezi sa svime ovima ovdje, naravno sve u jednoj vezi?
Well, you feeling, QE is the technique to experience you feeling. The experience of you feeling...
Otkuda dolaze zapravo riječi za početak?
I made it up.
Odlično. Iz praznine, pretpostavljam.
Yes. And you, meaning truth, and feeling, of course, feeling, in English. And I made it up because when we start talking about this, it's very common to someone say, oh, that's just like this, or that's just like that. And then as soon as they say, oh, I did no mind work, or I did so-and-so's work, or meditation or stuff, and then all of this, the mind gets very cluttered, or I should say it's prejudiced or biased towards a certain way of thinking, right? For instance, if you say God to someone, if I were to say, define God to this person, they define it. Okay, define God. There's a different definition. You ask 1,000 people, you have 1,000 different definitions of God. That's because it transcends the thinking mind. And so what the thinking mind says is, I need to be in control here, and this nothing stuff, I mean, this idea of something I can't understand bothers me. I want to put it into a box so I can keep it and take control of it. So I use a term that wouldn't be confused with anything else. Because often somebody will say, oh, it's like this. No, it's not. Oh, it's like that. No, it's not. So you feeling is a term that nobody's heard unless they've done this work. And then they know, not from intellect, but from the actual perception, the actual experience, what it is. And that's the important thing. So we can talk about nothing, but because nothing has no form, you can't define it. And go ahead.
Otkuda zapravo dolazi ta kontrola? Evo, kako ste napisali, suvremeni čovjek je vrlo domišljat u nalaženju načina da uguši unutarnji glas da nešto nije u redu. To uglavnom radi tehnologijom, podražajima, vanjskom zabavom. I naravno iza svega toga se kriju ova ideja o scenarijima koje stvara pa ih pokušava riješiti i slično. Ali otkuda zapravo stiže ta potreba za kontrolom? Ovako na jednoj konceptualnoj razini gdje jesmo. Imamo područje koje se ne može kontrolirati, imamo koji ima neku funkciju. Možda mu nije jedina funkcija na svijetu da pokušava biti control freak. Možda ima neku pametniju ulogu od toga.
That's easy. First of all, we have to control in order to survive. It's genetically imprinted. You must control your environment so that you can survive and propagate the species. So that's basic. But what happens is, when we lose our balance, when I say balance, I mean balance of inner and outer. And I don't mean intellectually inner or emotionally inner, I mean perceptually inner. You perceive the inner. Now, when we lose that, remember we just talked about, oh, something's missing. Is this all there is to life? That's what comes up. And then what we think is not, oh, I should experience you feeling. No. What we think is, I need more money. I'm feeling uncomfortable because this needs repair and I don't have the money, or I don't know the right people, or I've got this bad habit. And so we move outward to control. And as we already discussed, when you're successful out here, it's fleeting. Now, what we do is we start here and we experience here. Now, the experience of you feeling, when you have it, there's no suffering, there's no, you feel full, you feel whole, you feel complete while you're experiencing it. Then when you come out, inside, intuitively, not intellectually and not emotionally, but intuitively and experientially, you know that there is a time that you can be free of all this suffering, this pushing, this trying to control life. And so it draws you back automatically. And what you know is that this is the way to balance life. It just, I've been trying this, I do this, I can't just stay here, I can't live in a cave my whole life. No. And that's the beautiful thing about quantum entrainment is it allows you to experience this state, this inner state of you feeling, and allows it to work its way out into our everyday life so we have this balance. Mm-hmm. We're not always feeling like we need to control, and when we get off balance, we get back on balance very quickly.
Da bismo bolje osvijetlili ovu temu, možemo se poslužiti pogledom iz druge strane. Konkretno, na nekoliko stranica knjige ste se osvrnuli na koncept pozitivnog mišljenja i na njegove, u stvari, negativne strane. Pa iz perspektive koju ste upravo opisali, gdje je tu zapravo problem sa pozitivnim mišljenjem i što zapravo pozitivno mišljenje u svoj biti jest, ako zapravo nije ono kako se propagira da jest?
Positive thinking, it's a beautiful idea, but it has no foundation in the way a human being is built. And here's what it is. For years we've known, and research will back this up, that if you are happy, you have happy thoughts. And for years, there's just hundreds of thousands of case studies where people who are happy have happy thoughts, or good thoughts, uplifting thoughts. So we say the positive thinking philosophy is, if happy people have happy thoughts, if I have a happy thought, I'll be a happy person. But it doesn't follow, because happy thoughts come spontaneously out of happiness. You can't create happiness by saying, I'm going to be happy. You can't look in the mirror and you can't look into a mirror and say, you know, I'm happy. I'm good. You can't fool yourself. You can try really hard. But now recent research in the last 10, 15 years shows us that positive thinking and related things like motivational thinking and these sorts of things actually can be deleterious. And you might go, and again, there's a lot of research, and in the book, How to Be Happy Without Even Trying, that's English, I don't know what the translation would be. I go more deeply into the research and that beyond these systems. But it just because it's good to know that I'm not just saying this, that recent research is backing up the fact that positive thinking can actually decrease your effectiveness in doing things. One research I remember, they had two groups where the people just went into the gym and worked, and the others went in and they said, oh, I'm going to be, this is my goal, and I'm going to work as if I'm already there, and they found that it was very hard. They felt it was harder to do that than just go in and work, and many of them more dropped out. They had a harder time reaching the goal than just going and doing it and saying, oh yeah, I'm unhappy because I'm working, I'm not unhappy, but I'm working hard here, okay, I'm not going to try to make myself feel like I'm, create some illusion. So that's one thing. The other thing they found was certain personalities who practice this will find that they actually become depressed. Actually become depressed.
Zbog čega?
Well, because they, inside, intuitively, they know that they're not happy. They know they've created a situation to try and be happy. They don't feel it, but they keep trying. And so they feel like a failure. I'm failing at being happy. What's the matter with me? You see this with intention work, traditional intention work, where you have a desire, you want to fulfill that desire, and so you, for instance, let's say you want a new red sports car. So I want this so I can drive around and people can see me, and so you create this intention that you want it. You start to get the emotions worked up. Yes, this is good. And then you start to live as if you already have that sports car, right? And then what happens is, when you don't get it, which statistics show that is less than 1% of the time, yeah. When you don't get it, then you say, certain personalities now will say, what's wrong with me? The universe didn't support me. What's wrong? You know? And so besides, creating a lot of disharmony within, because it's an illusory process. It has its value. There's no two ways about it. Yeah. But for what we're looking for, what we have been taught, if you just look at your teachers, for instance, maybe let's say a law of attraction person writes a book. It's the best book ever on the law of attraction. And they're most popular, and say, wow, look.
Kako postati privlačan?
Yeah, I'm sorry?
Kako postati privlačan? Formula.
How to become, how to attract things to us that we want by universal favor, becoming in favor with the universe. So let's say somebody like that writes this book. It's famous all over the world. And then you have to say, well, look, they wrote this book. They know what they're talking about. They just got this great book, and they're teaching people this. This must work based on their success. Then they write a second book. And the second book, compared to the first one, is not very good at all.
Gdje je zapelo?
Exactly, but nobody thinks about that. Then they write a third book and a fourth book, and each one becomes less and less popular, right? Why? Did that author, did that teacher of the law of attraction, did they say, okay, now I am going to have the intention that I become less successful? You see, it doesn't make sense. And so it's a beautiful philosophy, but what we're doing to support that, it just doesn't, it's not supported by the activity that we do.
Recimo da neki čovjek se dovoljno puta u danu počne prisjećati kako bi trebao izići iz svakodnevne situacije i možda samo pogledati svoj prst, naravno u trenutku dok gleda prst, već tada nema ničeg drugog, barem na sekundu. I da recimo nekako malo po malo se uvjetuje da sve češće to radi i da ga zapravo vanjski stres sve manje nekako dotiče. Kako će se u svakodnevnom životu zapravo ponašati, evo da kažemo, takva osoba svjesna sebe ili koja to prakticira? Hoće li biti joj lakše, ugodnije, da li će biti jednako efikasna svjetovno ili neće? Vi ste rekli da je ovdje zapravo riječ o tome da u svjetovnom životu se sve zbiva. Pa kako bi recimo tako jedna osoba kroz neke zamišljene životne situacije prošla kada bi koristila upravo ove metode odvraćanja pozornosti, pažnje i sve što zovete na načine kako zovete?
Beautiful question, and that really drives us deep into this teaching. When we tend to think, and especially anyone who's been attached to a teacher of some sort, like a guru or something, which I spent probably 40 years of my life following gurus, doing long meditation techniques, that sort of thing. My program every day of meditation was 2.5 hours for 20 years. And I was looking at the teacher and judging myself by the teacher. And what I never really added up. And so I'm thinking, well, if the teaching is true, then I should be uplifted to the level of the teacher, at least. What's so special if that's true, then I should be there. Well, what happened was, after some time, I just said, well, you know, here I am. I was 61 years old. And I said, my gosh, I just lost my job. I was a teacher, and they rearranged in the university, they rearranged everything, and my job was eliminated. I was a new teacher there of physiology. I lost my job. I had debts from my own schooling for years that these student loans that the interest on was more than I made in a month, so they were compiling themselves. My health was terrible, right? And so what happened was, I just sat down and I said, listen, this isn't working, this whole idea of being greater, of being like this person. What is it about me that can't do that? And as soon as I sat on my couch for 3 days, I sat there and I said, I'm throwing out everything that doesn't work. Well, 3 days later, I sat there, nothing works. You know, and I just sat there, and as soon as I stopped trying to make it work, I felt incredible. And it was that stillness, the you feeling I was talking about, and there it was. I said, wow. And so then I tried to keep it, and it went away. So anyhow, long story short, I'm healthier. I have more energy. My immune system is better. I'm in my mid-70s. I have a very active life, physical and teaching and writing. That's me becoming more me. But if you compare me to a guru, if you want to see me walking around in peace and namaste this and that, no, that's not me. So the answer to the question is you become more of yourself, the way you need to be happy. And it's just that simple.
To ne znači zapravo manje operativan u životu, nego dapače, reklo bi se čak i više operativan.
No, you're being more of you. See, but we're born. Now, let me go back. Abraham Maslow talked about this hierarchy of needs. I think everybody studied that. Well, the top of the pyramid were people he called transcenders. These were people who felt full. And he did a lot of research on these people. In fact, he wrote a chapter in a book called Theory Z. And you could probably get a copy of that chapter, Theory Z, online. And in that, he has a paragraph devoted to each quality of people who are living in fullness, living the life they should live for themselves, not others. So when we see these qualities, they're just gentle qualities. They're not like overwhelming, oh, he's so great at this. And
Možete li nam nabrojati neke od tih osobina?
Absolutely. How about just enjoy watching rain hit, making circles in a puddle, right?
Dalje?
Yeah. You're at home with evil. You recognize evil, you don't embrace it, but you're not angry, you're not being overwhelmed by it, you're not running away. You have this evenness about it. You would find that you're more forward thinking. You're more likely to do things because you're not afraid of failure. You already feel fulfilled. You already feel comfortable. It's working from a level of just naturalness. I don't want to say peace, because that changes. Peace comes and goes. Love comes and goes. These are human, right? And you say, well, a person who's enlightened, and by the way, that's another word for these Maslow, these transcenders, would be enlightenment. A person who's enlightenment wouldn't be angry or sad anymore. No, that would make him less human. I remember, when my father died, deep sadness, and at the same time under that, a kind of a joy or a love was there. I can't explain it. And so my grieving it was okay to be sad. It's not like, oh, you shouldn't be angry, for instance, or you shouldn't do this or that. Anger is human. Now, beating somebody up because you're angry, of course that's an aberration. But the emotion itself is...
Ali tući samog sebe, to je u redu.
Well, anytime you do something that diminishes your stance, your balance with inner and outer, then you can say it's not bad. It's just that, it's something you've done. And if you choose, if that's something that makes you stronger, then go ahead and do it. But by definition, it doesn't. So when we, remember, this is not an intellectual thing. It's not a thinking mind thing. You would say, naturally we say, that's a bad habit. Okay, so this is what I'm going to do to break that bad habit. The difference when you experience you feeling is that bad habit gets broken naturally, without effort, when it's time for it to be broken, when it's time for you to have it broken. Here's an example. I had a young lady who wrote me and said, I was on your program. She was on a 90-day program where she did QE every day, and she says, I forget exactly what she wanted. She wanted just to get along better with people and enjoy her job more, something like that. 10 days into the program, her lifelong fear of spiders disappeared. The phobia was gone. Now, she wasn't even thinking about that, but because that was there and easy to be healed in that way, it went. Now she's freer, right? But if intellectually she would never work on that, she would work on something else. And maybe this phobia free, freedom from the phobia of spiders now allows her to do her job more effectively or something. We can't tell. We just know that being aware of you feeling and then going out and doing the work that we feel is best for us, you know, then that inner and outer life comes together, and that's the name of the game. You are unique. You hear it all the time. But this is the way to bring out your totality of uniqueness. It brings out you. The example I use, we're like, each of us, each human being is different, right? And so we say it's like a symphony, like we're all different instruments. And we have two jobs. We have to find out what instrument we are and then what music we should play. So what instrument, you would say, well, that's pretty easy, you know, or something. But no, when we're children, we naturally experience you feeling. You look at the clouds, you play with your cars or your tea set, or you draw in the dirt for hours. You're just in bliss. It's just perfect. But you have to learn to control your environment in order to survive, to go on. Well, unfortunately, if your parents are not transcenders, or if they're not experiencing you feeling, and your teachers aren't, and your friends, then they move you away. And Maslow has a book called Toward a Psychology of Being, where he breaks the human race up into two parts. Those people who need something and those who are content. And those are the transcenders here. So what happens is we lose that contentment that we have as young children. And we start trying to do this, I've got to study, you know, I've got to be nice to this person when I don't feel, Now that's necessary, but what's not necessary is to lose you feeling in the process. So by the time we get to adulthood, some of us can't even remember the joy of being a child.
Sve moramo se nanovo izmisliti. Gospodine Kinslow, eto, baš nema više vode, ali kad ništa ne pomaže, nemojte činiti ništa. Nemojte piti vodu. U svakom slučaju, eto, hvala vam na gostovanju i tako, eto, želim vam sretan put gdje god ste se uputili.
You know, I greatly appreciate the homework you did here. The questions you asked drove us very deeply into this teaching.
Ja sam napravio svu tu domaću zadaću, ali na kraju nisam se baš koristio većim dijelom. No, kao god da bilo, kao što rekoh, doviđenja.
Well, it has been absolutely my pleasure to meet with you and to talk with you over this subject, which is vital, I feel.
Također ja. Eto, hvala i vama na pažnji. I još koja misao za kraj. Ili kad bolje razmislim, možda je bilo dosta previše svih tih misli. Možda da probamo za kraj s jednom nemišlju. To je bilo to. Hvala i laku noć.